Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Download, where we bring you discussion and analysis from a Catholic perspective. Today is Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023, the Feast of St. Athanasius. I'm Brad Eli here with my two co-hosts, Simon Rafe and Kyle Gopi. And joining us today as a guest host is Nick Wiley. Hey there, Nick.
What's up, Brad?
1 year ago today, Politico released a draft majority opinion written by Justice Samuel Alito in the case of Dobbs v. Jackson, women's health. That leaked draft opinion suggested the majority on the court was probably going to overturn the infamous 1973 decision in Roe v. Wade, thus kicking the abortion issue back to the states. Over 50 days later, that became a reality as the majority decision in the case was made official on June 24th last year. We'll be talking about the leak, the overturning of Roe, liberals' double standards, and the future of the pro-life movement. To start things off, though, we'll be talking with one of our reporters, Dr. William Mahoney, who's got some new updates about the effort to find the leaker. Hey, William.
Hey, Brad. Thanks for having me.
The folks at the Supreme Court still haven't revealed who this person is yet. What's going on there?
Apparently, they don't know who it is. On Wednesday, Justice Samuel Alito was talked to the Wall Street Journal, and he said that he has an idea who it is. He thinks he's pretty sure who it is, but he just doesn't have the proof to name anyone. They said in January, too, that the U.S. Marshals Service, which launched an investigation after 8 months, came up with nobody. They had interviewed some 100 employees there and gone over information, but they'd come up with nothing. In the meantime, Senator Ted Cruz was out there on Fox on Sunday saying that he thinks they should bring the FBI into the investigation as well, but the Supreme Court's been hesitant to do that because of balance of powers and the two different branches.
Well, the FBI is kind of tied up right now going after pro-lifers and, parents at school board meetings, so I can see where they don't have time for this type of thing. Are you, William, you were around when the whole thing broke about the leak and all that and all the way through it up till now. Are you surprised that they've never found a leaker? The people in charge have never found a leaker?
I don't, honestly, my opinion is how much of this is theater and how much of this is they actually want to get the guy. I'm not really clear about that, because it seems to me that if Alito knows or has a very strong idea who it is, why wouldn't they just really find whoever that person is? Why wouldn't the U.S. Marshal Service just really trail that guy, go over there, get warrants, whatever they need to do to find what they need to find? I mean, I don't know for sure. I don't know all the inner working, all the details of how that works on the inside. I certainly, though, don't think bringing in the FBI is a good idea, because, like you said, they're busy going after pro-lifers and Catholics and everyone else. And actually, David Clark said that too, the media personality, the retired sheriff. He said the same thing. He's like, is he kidding? I mean, to bring in the FBI, the same ones that covered up Biden's, Hunter Biden's hard drive and all. So I'm surprised and I'm not surprised, depending on what's actually going on.
Yeah, how weaponized the DOJ has been, and the FBI going after trad Catholics and the pro-lifers, and like you say, hiding the Hunter Biden laptop thing. It would be surprising that they would even bother calling the FBI, seeing how it seems to be pretty politicized.
Yeah, 100%. That's what I think too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Mahoney, the Supreme Court said when this draft was leaked, the Supreme Court said that this was an egregious breach of trust. But it seems to me that the most egregious thing that's happened here, besides the leak, was the fact that we can't figure out who the heck did it. I mean, we had this, 9-month or so investigation, which ended a few months ago. And, they wrote their big report and everything like that, and it's basically a nothing burger. I mean, they revealed some of the things that the court could do better, in terms of protecting these documents. But you would think that with the power of the U.S. government, with, people who know how to do investigations, how can you not figure out who did it? And I want to get your thoughts on, is there any desire or is there any plan of a new investigation, a future investigation going forward? I know Alito gave his interview where he says he thinks he knows who it is, but do you suspect that there will be an actual second official investigation?
I really don't know. They didn't say that. The one that closed with the U.S. Marshal Service, that seemed like that was closed. They were giving their findings after I think they closed the investigation. I'm not sure if that's still open, but so whether or not they open a new one, I don't know. I would imagine they would. It seems like an extremely important thing to figure that out, because I do agree that that's a breach of people's trust in the integrity of the Supreme Court, that workers there can just, had to be someone there, I would think, so someone can just leak information. There's some questions going on right now, too, about tightening up the security in the Supreme Court. Apparently it needs an overhaul for security measures because too many people have access to too much information as well. So I don't know. I hope they do launch another investigation, and I hope they find this person. I can't imagine that it's that hard. We found Osama bin Laden,
Yeah, I can't imagine that it's too difficult to find whoever this would have been. And if Alito knows who it was, it suggests it's someone kind of prominent there, because if he were to actually know who this person is, be able to recognize them, figure it out himself, then it's probably someone with a good bit of influence there. But yeah, I mean, more than just the security of the court, this has been the security of these people's lives. People out at their houses threatening to kill them and all these things. Like, do you think it possibly affects future decisions in the Supreme Court of, I want to rule this way, but dang, I'm tired of having to have security everywhere I go, having my life on the line with every decision that I make?
I mean, I think that's the point. That's the point of the intimidation. Oddly enough, the people on the left say that it was leaked to garner support for the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, but that just seems ridiculous. And Alito himself said, that's ridiculous. Why the heck would we do that? I mean, we've had assassins quite literally come after us. I mean, Brett Kavanaugh, there's an actual murder charge, an attempted murder charge on he was 26 at the time, year-old guy who went to his house in Maryland and actually attempted to kill him because, he was angry. But so I think that it was probably leaked to try to get people to do exactly what they did, to get lefty pro-aborts to go out there and harass and intimidate the Supreme Court justices so that they would be afraid to make the ruling to overturn Roe versus Wade. I don't know what will happen in the future, but I mean, we live in a very toxic environment filled with double standards. I think it's Mike Huckabee who said, if it weren't for the double standards, Democrats would have no standards. And that seems to be the case here. They can go out and threaten and harass, but you don't really ever see the right doing that. So.
It was scary too, William, reading the Wall Street Journal's interview with Alito. He's mentioning assassination was behind the intimidation, the attempted assassinations, to promote that with the leak. So, that's a big thing there, to have to stare down the idea that there could easily be another leak, and your life and livelihood are at stake there. Thank you very much, William, for coming on with us today and explaining all this out.
Sure. Thank you.
1 year after the leak and still no punishment. Don't even have a person to punish for whoever's responsible for leaking it. But let's talk about the broader implications of what happened a year ago today. What do you guys have for us on this?
Yeah, I think initially we need to look at this not in such a narrow sense as just like, okay, so we've got this leak of Dobbs. Okay, so obviously we've got the leak of Dobbs and the failure to find the person who did it. So there could have been anyone who leaked it. It could have been anyone from Justice Roberts, any of the other justices, probably not Alito, as he said, and probably not Kavanaugh, unless Kavanaugh really wasn't thinking straight, because he obviously, chap tried to kill him, nearly did it, I think. But it could have been any of the justices. It could have been a whole bunch of people within the Supreme Court there.
About 100 people.
About 100 people there within the Supreme Court. And of course, time was when you wanted to leak a document, you needed to get physical access to the document. And if you go back far enough, you needed to be able to actually copy the document. And that was obviously quite a large, laborious process. And then, Bob Xerox, or whoever it was, he invents the means of copying bits of paper. And then, of course, but you'd still have to photocopy the thing. You'd have to physically take it from where it goes to where a photocopy machine is. You'd have to physically take the thing out. Now, of course, it's like, oh, I've got a phone, snip, snap, I can email that away. And suddenly it becomes very difficult to determine who did it. So I do understand why there's potentially a possibility of the danger of the leaks. What we've got, I think, is this has turned up with this question of the leaking of this document, the leaking of the documents recently about the military deployments in Ukraine and these kind of things, the leaking of all these secret documents, the fact that Trump and Pence and Biden and probably every single other elected representative have got top secret documents in their garage. I actually checked myself to see if I accidentally had some top secret documents. It seems that we've just got too many things that are top secret. There are too many getting around. They're just getting too leaked. It's like almost like, okay, guys, can we maybe pull back on the production of all this paper? We've produced this report here that, as you said, it's a nothing burger. It hasn't said anything. How much did that cost? To produce. How many
out of my pocket.
Out of your pocket. I mean, how many? How many welfare checks could that have written? How many people could that have helped? And I think this is kind of one of the things that I want to look at. We've got this ridiculous over government sort of thing. There's too much government, and they're just kind of spinning the wheels and doing ridiculous stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about government oversight in this particular situation. I know there's people who would freak out if there was some sort of, internal services within the Supreme Court that's going to now come in and start auditing everything. And, I can understand people's fears when it comes to that. But when you look at the way this investigation was done, or, how poorly it was done, I should say, I mean, it raises questions. It's like, why was the Marshal Service the one to do this investigation? And the Court Marshal Service of the Supreme Court is really tasked with some pretty mundane things on a usual daily basis. They're in charge of things like, court security. They're in charge of things like distribution of payroll. Like a massive investigation of this, how is that under their purview? That's my question. And we even know that the marshal, had to have outside help, some federal investigators coming in and helping them. Exactly the nature of that help and who those investigators were, I think, remains pretty unclear. But as we said, this is, in some ways, it's very hard to do when you have about 100 people who have potential access to these documents in a digital form. I know that there were sworn affidavits for all these people when they interviewed them to say, were you involved with this? What did you know? What didn't you know? Cell phones were confiscated from these people to check. I don't know if personal computers were, I'm assuming. But, a lot of people were freaking out initially because it seemed that, according to what they were saying early on, and especially this report, that the justices themselves weren't actually talked to. The Marshal Service backtracked that and said, yeah, well, we actually talked to all the justices. You would figure those are important people to talk to, but nothing about their spouses. Justices go home, they share this information with their spouses. They share potentially documents on their personal computer if they took them home or not.
They take it home, put it in their garage.
Exactly. I mean, which garage?
I know that sounds kind of like ridiculous and funny, but it's like, dude, you've got zero respect for the documents in question. Okay, so just as an example, I think I treat the internal documents here of importance with greater respect than the federal government treats its own documents. We have a document which has, it is the master budget, and it contains everyone's list of everyone's pay on it and everyone's hire date and all these important pieces of information about them. That is a single file. There are no other copies. It is locally stored. It is not cloud stored. It is password protected by a password that only I know. There are not copies of it sitting in my garage. I do not print copies of the thing. I open it only when it's just me in the room, etc., etc., etc. Nobody else sees it because it's so very important. And that's how you have to treat this stuff. Why are there 100 people seeing a draft nearly 2 months before publication? Really? Really? Why are there 100 people seeing that? Why isn't that just being batted around the justices? They've had their discussions. They've decided, okay, what's the final decision going to be? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that just because the fact that they came out right after and was like, oh, this isn't the final draft. This is what we have right now. We're voting on this, but it might not be the final draft. Is basically what they said when it first came out. And right then and there, the whole world hated them. The whole world was persecuting them, going to their houses. I would go ahead and I would have gone all the way with it. I would have changed it. No, I would have changed it to what it should have been in the first place. Is acknowledging the fact that a human life is a human life since conception, and that I would have gone ahead and protected babies in the womb right there under the Constitution. No abortion ever. Just because. So what's going to be the difference between? We're taking away the constitutional right to abortion, and we're going ahead and protecting all of the babies. In the liberal mind, that's what happened. Like at that time, that's what happened. To add those words on paper, I don't think would have been this whole extra thing that would have made them go crazier necessarily than they did. I would have gone ahead and went all the way, because at least privately, you would hope that that's what they believe. Those are Catholics. Those are all Catholics right there on the court.
It was the Catholics.
And they all believe this. It's scientifically proven, theologically proven, all these things. And for them to have not gone that extra step is still kind of mind-boggling. And I think it was the perfect time to go ahead and do it, because you're already under fire. You might as well just go ahead and go all the way.
We can bring the audience up to speed there. Justice Blackmun, when he penned Roe v. Wade, said if it was ever determined in the future that it was a life prior to birth, and that you were going to be terminating a life in utero, that would actually be protected under the 14th Amendment.
It was the personhood issue.
Personhood
that was the important thing. Yeah,
is
Blackmun
what needs
said
to be championed. So the guy that penned Roe said that would be the silver bullet that would kill Roe right there, and actually kill Roe. What we have right now is what Ruth Bader Ginsburg was saying should have happened from the beginning. Never had a Roe, always left it up to the states. So now we're getting a kickback to the states. And really, we still have abortion. The only thing that would stop it at the state level, when you have referendums, the Supreme Court can't even say, well, that's not jiving with, we're not trying to invent anything here. They're having it at the state level. The only thing that would kill that legislation would be personhood.
Yeah, I think it's important maybe to discuss for some of our audience who are maybe not Americans or familiar with American the Constitution and civics is, so Roe v. Wade, that decision, and Doe v. Bolton that came around with it, those were judicial decisions. Those are not legislative decisions. So there are three branches of government within virtually every single system of government in the world has three branches of government. Maybe they're not as clearly defined as in the American system, which is very clearly defined. There's the executive, which does things. It executes the power. So it does that sort of stuff. It runs the country. There is the legislature, which passes laws. And then there is the judiciary, which interprets the laws. Okay, and obviously interprets the laws often within criminal and civil penalties. But in a lot of systems, including the American one, the judiciary has a role of kind of actually interpreting, well, okay, that's the text of the law, but what does it mean in this situation? And do these laws jive together? So what happened with Roe v. Wade back in '73 was a judicial decision was made that there was a right to an abortion, and they found it in the penumbras of the Constitution. It's a whole discussion. It's kind of ridiculous. Is the process they used to do it. But multiple judges, justices, including Ruth Bader Ginsburg, have said it would have been better had this been allowed to go through a legislative process by which the elected representatives of the people could have passed a law which could have been passed by a majority of the representatives in both chambers, which could have been signed into law by the president, and which could have then gone to the judiciary, and the judiciary said, you know what, that is a law which jives with the Constitution. That's what has been done. And so really Roe upset kind of everyone. Obviously it upset the pro-life people because suddenly, hey, we're murdering babies and that's not cool. But it also ultimately upset the liberals because the liberals who were pro-abortion are now like, okay, our slow march legislatively has been stopped, and now they're trying to like restart that march and go through, which I think is a very interesting thing, and that's what Catholics need to be focusing on. It's these legislative actions at the state level, at the federal level, at the local level to try to stop babies being killed.
And here's one thing that I think about is the fact that, so as we've seen, every single abortion on the ballot thing has gone the way of the abortionists. And even just recently, it was Montana and South Carolina who tried to put in bans. Both Republican-dominated legislatures couldn't get it done because they were the rhino thing. And to me, this just speaks to the lack of Catholicity in Catholics. And this attitude that we've had for a long time where all I need to do is go home and make things right in my house and everything's just going to take care of itself. It's not, because when you have all these depraved people that no one has evangelized, and when you give depraved people the right to vote and to legislate and to rule over themselves and you too, it's just, you're going to get this snowball effect. Imagine what would happen if just insidious ballot measures that could get on the ballot. I'm not sure any of them would go our way. I really don't know. It seems like any kind of evil that gets put to a straight vote doesn't end up going our way just because we're not doing what we're supposed to do. We've neglected these people for so long, and now we're getting those benefits. We're getting what we deserve. We're getting the leaders that we deserve. We're getting all of this because we thought that, we can just be quiet, live our peaceful life, and everything's just going to be okay.
Yeah. I've just been told by the producer that it was actually one of the other big square states. It was actually Nebraska, not Montana. So apologies to
my bad.
to people. Apologies to the 7 people that live in both of those states.
Another point that happened with the, you're talking about all the referendums that were passed and all that. The real strong push for abortion happened in these states in a way that you can't undo. When they say the state constitution by referendum allows abortion in this state, you're like checkmate. The Supreme Court, the way it's set up right now, they're all saying, that's taboo. We don't mess with that. Grassroots legislation like that. But the other thing that it did was allow the left to have abortion as the talking point moving into the 2024 election. And it's the only thing they got. When you talk about you destroyed the economy, destroyed the borders, destroyed foreign policy, destroyed the military, destroyed schools, destroyed whatever, parental rights and the whole transgender movement, okay, all of that, you are zero on all those levels. So what do they want to talk about? The one thing they want to talk about is abortion. And we kind of mentioned this in a previous download. Well, what should be the GOP Republican response to that? And the GOP gets kind of raked over the coals for saying, well, we don't want to go to go into their one talking field, being that one silo, because that's where you're going to take all the nukes, right, from the left. That's all they have. That's all they can get you on, because of the radicalized people out there. They're like, yeah, I got the free right to do anything I want, even kill my own baby. So what I would really like to see the GOP do is look at all of the different leftist policies that are anti-family, anti-American, anti-woman, anti-child, and say this is all leading to abortion. So when you actually say, when you destroy the economy, now you can't have 2 people getting married and have a nice little family. You can't have a mother even making it on her own. You can't have people being able to, and mothers are out, expecting mothers, I know for a fact, are out there saying, if I'm put to the test here of trying to raise this child on my little bit of a salary and no other husband, why are the husbands out there? Because you got the porn industry going on, you got the drug industry going on, you got the family destroyed, so young men aren't really men standing up. GOP need to take all of that into consideration, say this is a pro-life issue at the end of the train, and you're wrecking it on all levels.
That would mean that the GOP would in some way have to be pro-life, which it's not at all. Because it's not pro-life, it's not pro-family. Those are not. Everyone's thing at the end of the day is freedom and whatever they define freedom as. Now, some people, some GOP are going to rightly say there's always this point where it's like that's too far. So the whole transitioning kids to a different sex thing, that's a bridge too far for GOP or whatever. But what have they done at all to try to promote? I mean, even people that have had pro-family policies, it's kind of laughable, the little bit of money, resources, anything they're putting into this. It's the same with the bishops. They've done nothing for the pro-life movement. The GOP's done nothing for it either. It's really just a huge grassroots thing that people with some kind of morality have stuck to, because there's no one actually leading it in in terms of politicians or the hierarchy and all that. None of them are actually leading it. And so, yeah, as long as you have that they can't point to these things that are like, you know, this is causing abortion, so we can handle that. This is causing abortion, because they're in the same, because the GOP's in the business of making money. That's their business, is having a good economy so that we're all making money. It's still not the fact of the inherent dignity of the person and what's actually going to make everyone holy and happy and thriving. It's just what's going to get what's going to have us making the most amount of money.
Oh, of course, you've got to as well look at this situation as the GOP has used the pro-life position, has used this for decades. Since '73, this whole thing of put us in power, put us in the Senate, put us in the White House, and we will put pro-life justices on the Supreme Court. And you know what? They've put a whole bunch of pro-life justices on the Supreme Court, and nothing changed. If you go back and you actually look at the times when Roe v. Wade came up for consideration until this most recent one, Dobbs, bang, bang, bang. It just gets upheld each time by GOP-appointed justices. What you end up with is you end up with Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump's problem as a politician is he's too honest, which is kind of hilarious, but Donald Trump actually fulfilled his campaign promise on this issue. Donald Trump said, elect me, and I will put in pro-life justices who will overturn Roe v. Wade. As it happened, he got 3 opportunities to appoint justices, and he appointed 3 justices, and he appointed justices who did, in fact, overturn Roe v. Wade. I am certain that none of his GOP advisors of the Romney, McCain camp and all of these people, they were probably saying, Donald, you don't need to do this. You've already got their vote. I've said it before, I will say it again. Donald Trump thinks like a businessman. He's thinking, well, I said I would do this. It was a contract for him. I said I would do this if they gave me the votes. They gave me the votes. He said he did it. Donald Trump did the thing that the entirety of the GOP thought was idiocy, and he got, Roe v. Wade overturned in that way. His justices did that. And now, of course, what are the Dems doing? They're doing these referenda. So the referenda, there's plebiscites, to use another word, where you ask the people. These directly address the people about one single specific issue. So you don't have to go along and say, well, okay, here's a bag of stuff. Here's a bag of stuff, and it's like good economy, and it's no transitioning kids, and it's no women, no men in women's sports, and it's no abortion, and here's like all the lefty garbage. It's the exact opposite of that. And you got to go like, oh, which do I choose? No, you can just say, well, I love all of this GOP stuff except the abortion. So I'll vote GOP and I'll plebiscite on abortion.
It's the most laughable thing of all, and this is no offense to like women or anything, but the fact that we're talking about women's sports on like this massive level for the first time ever, and that's the hill we're willing to die on the GOP, is that like, oh, we're protecting women's sports, which bring in actually no money to the economy or anything like that. Like, this is just not, like, professional sports is not what the ultimate end of woman. It detracts. Like, professional sports is one of those things that directly leads to abortion. Like, how many, like, name one of them that's not a lesbian who is not on the pill or who's had abortions in order to stay in their job.
I think it's just very clear with the transgender movement that when you have a, huge muscular guy and he's beating a little tiny girl in the same sport, that most people can at least grassroots common sense say, yeah, that's something's not fair about that, and she's losing her scholarship over it. So I think it's just so blatantly obvious, even to the common man, that that's just unfair. But the idea that the plebiscite coming from the grassroots level and the politician, the GOP, for instance, who aren't well formed, they're both coming out of this milieu of culture. And this culture is downstream of religion. Andrew Breitbart said politics are downstream of culture, but culture is downstream of religion. And when you lose the culture, you lose really both the politics and back into the church, because vocations come for those families that are in the culture. Those are the people that are going to be voting on. So the only way you can ever fix the situation is fixing the culture from which your politicians and your church leaders come from. And you can't fix that without church leaders. They're the ones that put the fresh stream in every generation. And that's the way our good Lord had designed it 2,000 years ago, was if you don't have a fresh group of church leaders in that generation putting fresh water into the current of the culture, that's going to go stagnant. And we've had stagnant water in America for 50 years, and it's getting pretty, swampy.
So you talked about the ineptitude of the leadership in the church. We talked about the ineptitude of the GOP. But I would even extend that out to a failure of conservatives in general when it comes to fighting the culture war and pushing back against the left. Because I mean, even going back to our example with the will the leaker ever be caught question, probably not, because those controlling the levers of power now are the left, and they're very good at it. We've seen that when they're in control, they're extremely effective. You look at how effective they are with protesting and writing letters and doing all these things. They're extremely organized, and they get that from one of their founders, Saul Alinsky, with his rules for radicals. But it speaks to the fact that the conservatives don't have that mindset in many ways. We're not good at organizing. We're not good at protesting. We're not, therefore winning the culture war. We need to be better at all those things. And I would just, when I mention stuff like that, it makes me think of, one of our coworkers' books. Dave Gordon wrote a book called Rules for Retrogrades. It's sort of a handbook for conservatives of how to fight back against the left, take control of the narrative, take control of the language, never be afraid to stand up for truth in the public square, whether that's the political square or the cultural square. So we need to push back.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is that the left is in a way a very morally driven people. They have this set of morals, and they are angered whenever those morals are broken. And it's not the same at all on the side of Christians. It's just not. Christians are more than happy in a lot of ways to just be walked over and to not get mad at morals at the morals just being destroyed around them. People don't if you do something in front of hardcore leftists, they're going to call you out right then and there. They will be completely angry in your face. But if you saw something that just utterly disgusted you, you probably aren't even going to do anything. You're not going to say anything about it. You're just going to let it slide and go, maybe I'll say a prayer for that person. If you do that, I hope you would do that, but that's about as far as it'll probably get ever, unless it's something just totally evil, just beating, a leftist, somebody beating down. You see videos every day, people just getting in these New York City, all these places, extreme violence, and no one's helping these people. A lot of times it happens right in front of them.
Somebody is shooting video of it.
Somebody's recording it, but no one is stepping in to help, even though they know it's wrong and they don't believe that it should be done. But when it comes to the other side, they'll be in your face about it.
Well, it's the quietism problem, isn't it? That's what it is. That's the quietism thing. I'm kind of done with I was done years ago with labeling myself as conservative. This is ridiculous. The only people these days who are actually, technically speaking, conservative, okay, J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter novels, she is a conservative on the basis that what she is saying is, well, here's where we stand right now, which is kind of a generally accepted position that men cannot become women and real women are women and trans women are not women. She's saying this is it. She is conserving that position. What position are we conserving? The position that, that abortion shouldn't be allowed, that homosexuality shouldn't be approved, that contraception shouldn't be okay, that era has no rights. Those are not positions one can conserve. Those positions have gone. They have been lost. They have been abandoned. At this point, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's like coming along and saying, oh, the conservatives in France, yes, we're trying to defend the Maginot Line. I assure you, you are not trying to defend the Maginot Line. Hitler is goose-stepping down the Champs-Elysees, dude. You are not defending the Maginot Line at this point. What you need is you need to be like, okay, we now need to be pushing back. That's not conservatism anymore. That's progressivism.
You talked about morals, that the left has morals. And I know you're a qualified sense on that. And I think the young people out there are looking at the left and they're saying, at least they're slick. At least they get things done. At least they're organized. At least they got the mojo. And look at the ragtag right over here. And I'll tell you, I believe this is the reason why. is because the left is ruthless. They're not conflicted. They don't have a problem of offending God, my conscience, sin, and all this. Yes, if Hillary Clinton was shown stomping on a bunch of puppies, she would never get reelected. She could be in the tank for abortion up until the partial birth and still get elected. I mean, so if you want to say, well, there's a moral there, don't, treat animals inhumanely, okay, then I guess that's fine. But there is a ruthlessness about it that puts everybody in lockstep. And if you're not on board with that, you're shunned right off the bat. On the right, we're all like, well, I go this far, and you're conservative this far, and you have that bag of things, and you want some of this, but not some of that. And we have all this conflict. We have all this system of fair play. We don't think that, certain things should be done in a certain way, or I have a problem with lying, or you have a problem with stealing. The left, burn it all down. Burn it all down now. And you know what? We've got people in charge that aren't going to put us in jail. 2020, we're all sitting here running around with masks on, right? And the left, they're without masks. They're out there burning down the city, and no one's arresting them because they don't even have masks on, let alone the fact they're burning things down. So that idea that they're completely ruthless puts them all locked up. And the second thing is, I really think there's this top-down focus there. There are people like Soros and others all the way up the line that are doing a lot of thinking for them. When those guys show up for a protest, the signs are already made. They're already there. The bricks are already set. All of this stuff is organized. We can't even agree on what time to show up on a street corner to pray a rosary at an abortion rally. These guys have it all mapped out. So absolutely there is this top-down, we got to control the media, we got to control the politics, we got to control the local, social media and all this stuff. They got that stuff taken care of. And that's a slick way of running things.
And all it really takes is one person of great influence to start it. If Archbishop Vigneron said, hey, Archdiocese, we are all meeting at this abortion clinic this Saturday, and we're going to do a rosary and a procession all around it, a lot of people would show up.
Yeah.
A lot of them. But and you can't necessarily do that without like a lot of marketing and strategy and all that. If you're a lower named person, like I can't just go online and say, hey, everybody in Michigan, we're meeting at this point and we're going to do all this stuff. I can't really do that.
It would take 5,000 Instagram followers.
It would take so much effort. But somebody like Archbishop Vigneron, someone who is reputable, it doesn't, any state you go to, whatever, there are big name people who God gives you power for the sake of others. For the people who are under you is why you have power. You are to serve them, and power is all about serving. And you serve no one whenever you just go up there. And it's a luxury for people to see you. And oh man, I'm so happy for them that they got to be around me. Oh, it's such hard work that I have to go out there and speak to people. No, you were given power and influence for a reason, to push forward the good. And a lot of the people that have been given, like with Jesus and Pilate, Jesus fully acknowledges, yeah, you have the power to do whatever you want right now. And my Father gave it to you. And so that's why it's your choice and your influence right now. That's why it's a great sin for you, because you do have this power. And so that these people who are of great influence, of great power, that are doing nothing, that aren't becoming great organizers and show it and giving people a way to fight back, it's going to be much harder on them in judgment and all. They have it for a reason.
With power comes responsibility. And back the numbers up for what you're saying right there. When we find at Church Militant here, we find somebody like Burke saying something strong, Strickland saying something strong, Mueller saying something strong. We always report on that. I've been here since 2014, and I've never seen articles get more traction than when a church leader, on a rare occasion, a Sarah or somebody out there, who actually takes a firm stand, says something that's actually not the status quo, pushes back. Those articles get shared, liked, outpacing anything else you're going to write out there. So yes, people are hungry to hear from the church leaders. They're hungry to hear one of them have a spine, step up and say something that's actually a bit jaded against the status quo out there, really pushing back, and they will get behind that statement 100%. It's just so rarely happens. Mm-hmm. I mean, it can go a month before you can find another story like that to report. People are like, why don't you report something good? I wish we could.
And I think it's interesting that the people that you named, obviously Strickland is a sitting archbishop. He is an ordinary. He has a diocese. Burke doesn't. In what sense does Burke lead? With the best will in the world, what is Burke in charge of? He's not in charge of diocese. You know, he says wonderful things, absolutely, 100%, I grant him that, but he's not a sitting archbishop doing, as you just suggested, if Archbishop Vigneron came out, if Cardinal Supich came out and did that, if Cardinal Dolan, if these people who are, okay, I'm an ordinary, I'm actually doing the role that the bishops were created to do. I'm not just been given this as a titular thing because I'm an administrator of some bureaucratic office somewhere in the Vatican, or I've retired or something like that, you know. But no, when I'm actually there and I've got souls, I've got priests under me and they've got souls in their parishes, and I've got the ability to say, okay, all of you sheep, we're all going to do this. Come with me and this is my plan to do this. Well, they don't do it.
My experience since 1990s, that's true. It's always the retired bishop who gives you the best retreat, the best advice, will actually say something that's actually staunch and take a, get his spine back, actually. But it has to be after retirement.
I am reminded of Barack Obama talking with Medvedev, the Prime Minister of Russia, and he said, after my next election, it will be my last election and I will have more freedom, because that's it. It's now I've retired, now I'm done. After this, yeah,
it's kind of like those college professors who say, I really want to say this, but I have to get tenure first so they don't fire me first. And,
yeah.
I mean, just to touch on that point that Brad mentioned earlier, the left is really good about using that sort of no rules approach. I mentioned Alinsky earlier with the rules for radicals, but in all honesty, there are no rules. It's really anarchy for them, and it's sort of a dichotomy here. They have this, some people have termed it, the left has this tactic of anarcho-tyranny. Anarchy for the people that are useful for us, that'll go and burn down the cities and whatnot, but tyranny for those who oppose us. And that's really the operating system that they're going under here. I mean, you kind of alluded to it earlier with the COVID lockdown area. The conservatives were locked down, everyone was locked down, but if you had a just cause, if you had an ideology that aligned with the left, like Antifa, they were allowed to go in and burn down state buildings. They were allowed to go in and take over, multiple city blocks and try to create their own autonomous state within a United State. It's just crazy. And another dichotomy too would be the treatment of the supposed Trump investigations and its Russian collusion, and all that stuff has come to be false. But then you have people rotting without much due process in federal holding facilities based on their supposed insurrection of January 6th. It's just such a double standard here. I'm even reminded of things like during the lockdown era. Remember Nancy Pelosi was not supposed to leave her house or whatever. She had to wear a mask, but she was going and getting her hair done. You had Gavin Newsom telling people you had to stay home and order Uber Eats or whatever when he was going out to an expensive restaurant, and no one was wearing masks. So it's always this rules for me and not for the approach.
Well, at least they have rules, and they had that, like William said, if it wasn't for double standard, they'd have no standards.
At all.
I think the earlier thing that you were talking about, all this paperwork and all this stuff going on, and so many people shared, we're in a digital age. And that digital age, you have access to so much information, and you can send it and share it so easily. You would think they would be able to track down, the IPN address and all this type of thing on some of those things. But when you have everything on a computer and everything is so easily hacked, they're hacking everything. They're hacking the Pentagon, they're hacking this and that, and all over the place. So the highest security level stuff is getting hacked today. And that information is all just sitting right there. If you did have only a piece of paper and it was locked up in a safe, it would be much more secure. But what's on Google, Google owns all your docs, and they're the big people out there that can,
Well, I'm saying the federal government isn't putting its stuff on Google Docs. I mean, I think that
it's putting itself on servers that, was it Hillary Clinton? The server thing, she had that open to the whole internet.
This isn't a failure of technology, which kind of, and this comes down to this wider issue. This is a failure of persons. The problems that we're in are not a failure of technology, they're not a failure of systems, they're not a failure of principles, they're a failure of persons. People have decided to do things the selfish way, the simple way. This is why, so Hillary Clinton decides that she wants to have her own personal email service so that she doesn't have to have oversight. Okay, that's simplistic, it's selfish, it's narcissistic. That's where it is, okay? Joe Biden decides that he wants to take home various documents and put them in his garage. Donald Trump does the same, so does Mike Pence, so does every other single elected official, apparently. This is where it comes. That people come along and they say, okay, you've got a failure of persons with the leaking of the Ukraine military documents, where it was some Air National Guardsman, I believe, who, yes, had access to this thing, but it's like, okay, why do so many people have access to it? Who was the general, the admiral, the whatever they have in the Air Force? Somebody will remind me. Who made that decision? Okay, oh yes, we give access to all this sort of stuff to people. These are failures of persons. In just the same way, the moral failure that we're looking at is a failure not of systems, it's a failure of individual persons, individual Catholics. Absolutely yes. If Archbishop Vigneron said, hey, let's all turn up at the Rosary Rally, you'd get a lot of people. You wouldn't get everyone, because some people, probably a majority of people, will be like, you know what, I gotta go wash my hair. You know what, I gotta go do something else. It's a failure of persons and a failure to engage with this. It's a failure of persons to turn up and vote for these plebiscites and say, no, perhaps we shouldn't mutilate children. Perhaps we shouldn't kill them in the womb. All I gotta do is put an X on a bit of paper. Stand in line 5 minutes, put an X on a bit of paper, and I cannot be bothered to do it. That is a failure of persons. It is not a failure of systems.
I mean, people are behind, people are always behind the actions and things like that. Even the report that came out a few months ago that reported on the supposed conclusion of we didn't find any information about who leaked this thing. Even they tried to claim that it was just an issue of policies. Well, they're just policies, but Simon's right. They're people who make the policies. So, I mean, but there was interesting stuff in that report, too, that revealed kind of like the inner workings of the Supreme Court, and it kind of amazed me when I read it. It's that the Supreme Court, the federal document concluded that the Supreme Court had an inability to track who had access to the document. This is the highest court in the nation, all the technology. We just caught this 21-year-old kid for leaking documents on a streaming service. Like, you can catch that kid, but you can't figure out who amongst these 100 people leaked the document. They also said there was a lack of written policies for safeguarding sensitive documents within the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court was supposed to interpret laws, interpret the Constitution. They don't have written policies that track who has access to these documents. That blows my mind.
Well, that brings into originally we were talking about why were the marshals, why weren't the FBI and all that, and there is so much of going back to the Obama era. I don't think enough emphasis is put on that two-term period of Obama just packing, radicalizing all these arms with all these divisions of government with all these radicals. We saw that when Trump got elected, he had to battle all those people. It was a swamp that I don't think he even had any inkling of how deep, how profound, how putrid, how many swamp creatures were in that swamp. And in 4 years, he didn't get anywhere near close to draining the swamp. All we did was find out more and more swamp creatures who were in it, sadly enough. And then you come back to the Biden era, back to packing the Bureau of Investigation and the DOJ and all these places with weaponizing them for control. Once again, going back to the left, you're going to be in the tank for killing 3,000 babies a day. You're in the tank for having skewed your relationship with God because of that and every other thing of the homosexuality, transgender, anti-family, and everything that's just anti-God. You don't have any problem with saying, well, what I want to do is in power. I want to control. And how do you control? And I think that's what the left is very, very good at. Understanding, well, this is the schematic. And goes back to Stalin. I don't care who votes. All these people, you want elections, advanced stuff, it's all cool. I just want to know who's the one person that counts the vote. Is that you? Okay, I got this. I got a gun to your head at nighttime saying this is how you're going to count the vote. It's very simple when you have no without any principles. But that principle of control, that makes it very, very simple for you.
Yeah, but the thing is, like I'm saying, with the GOP having no morality itself, the left is able to keep pushing this false morality. And it all comes back to, at the end of the day, you should be able to have sex with whoever you want, whenever you want. That's the underlying of basically all of it, is your selfish sexual desires. Because the right doesn't preach virtue because it's not virtuous. It has no virtue, so it can't impart the virtue, because virtue is more attractive. And you see that with big people online. The biggest people who are followed online are these secular dudes who have a lot of natural virtue, who, like, a lot of people follow after, and they get some really bad moral things wrong, which perpetuates this whole sexual thing. But we don't have anyone who's actually virtuous, who is hardcore giving out you need to be virtuous and can talk. Because that's the most pathetic thing to me, is the fact that even when priests and these people in charge have good things to say, they have zero public speaking ability. They absolutely suck at delivery. And so you either have, you can't win whenever you have people who, one, aren't virtuous, and two, can't talk. But the other side has the exact opposite. Obama was one of the best speakers I've ever heard. Obama would get asked really tough questions, wouldn't answer the question at all, but he would tell you some really pretty things, and you would be like, dang, that guy's good.
Bill Clinton was the other one. Michael Voris.
Bill.
Michael Voris tells a story back in his news days of when he was covering a Bill Clinton presser or debate or something like that. Anyway, and Voris has like a file like this, and he's sitting there, and it's got all of the information about all the things that are likely to come up. Anyway, Bill Clinton gets asked a question. Bill Clinton straight out lies, just totally and utterly just lies. Now, Voris, the way Voris tells the story, he knew that file back to front, up and down, left and right. He knew it totally. And he's like, okay, I intellectually know that is a lie. I intellectually know that is a lie that Bill Clinton just told. I open the page. Yes, that is categorically a lie. And Michael Voris says, when you ask him this thing, he's like, damn if I didn't nearly believe him. And that was it. It was like you had a guy who was opposed to Bill Clinton and everything he stands for. You have a guy who knew it was a lie. You had a guy who had black and white there, and he's almost convinced. Yeah, some of those guys on the left are really good orators.
Yeah, this goes back to the whole formation of the seminaries for the last 50 years. They've weeded out the solid, manly men who would speak clearly, who would be like, this is black and white. Those guys are goodbye good men. They were stamped and branded rigid. Back from the early 70s on all the way up. That's offensive, your stance, your position, your tone, I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong, but you're offensive in your tone. And that just meant you were a man. Now they call it microaggressions or whatever you want to go on with. So the idea that you don't have any of those manly men who are actually going to defend the truth because they know at the end of that truth there's a life that's attached to it, and that's going to be eternal salvation, yes or no, for that life. So I have to fight for that life, fight for that soul. And at the other side of it, you got, there's only one conspiracy. I always go back, Genesis 3:15. And if you read Mystical City of God, the devil was the one who invented the 7 capital sins. You say sex is the only thing that, to have sex. That's what they're using because that's so tangible for most people. They could tempt you with other things, but the common man can fall at that level, 70, 80%. Our Lady of Fatima said most people go to the hell out of the sins of the flesh. So that's the easy one to grab, but let's just have laws that are dividing people on that. I want to have sex with whoever I want, and that's the way it's going to fall here. So, you think about that chess game that's being played, you got the devil at the one side and God at the other, and God doesn't break the rules. He holds on to them even to your free will. He won't violate that. The devil will push as hard as he can against it all. So, but anyway, thanks for joining us today. Today's episode of The Download. Now, please join us as we finish in prayer, begging Our Lady's intercession for our nation and our church. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Salve Regina,
Mater Misericordiae,
vita dulcedo et spes nostro salve. A te clamamus, exules filii Hevae. A te suspiramus, gementes et flentes, in hoc lacrimarum vale. Ea ergo advocata nostra, illos tuos misericordes oculos ad nos converte, et Iesum benedictum fructum ventris tui, nobis post hoc exilium ostende, o clemens, o pia, o dulcis Virgo Maria. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you again for joining us for The Download. We premiere a new episode like this every weekday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. From all of us here at Church Militant, God bless you.